Ever picture yourself trading in, the rough streets of New York City for that Arizona sunshine? Maybe thinking, all right, time to wind down this career.
Sounds nice.
Right. That's what Peter Forcelli, who was a seasoned, NYPD homicide detective, had in mind when he made that move over to the ATF.
Yeah.
But little did he know, he was walking right into a different kind of chaos. Bureaucracy, red tape.
Oh, yeah?
More guns than you can imagine.
And that's where our deep dive into, the deadly path begins. We're going behind the curtain of the ATF.
Okay.
See the world through Forcelli's eyes, those challenges of fighting, gun trafficking, and really unpack what it means to be a whistleblower, that personal cost.
It's a story that grabs you from the get-go.
It does.
But before we get too far, we got to lay down some groundwork, right? Got to understand this whole source states versus market states thing when it comes to guns. You've probably heard these terms before.
Oh, absolutely.
But they're key to understanding how this all works.
Yeah, totally. In a nutshell, market states, like where Forcelli started, New York,
right?
That's where the demand for illegal guns is high, so they're being trafficked EN. Think of them as the final destination for these weapons. Source states. Now, those are places like Arizona where Forcelli landed guns, originate there. They become these pipelines funneling firearms all over the place, other states, even across borders.
Supply and demand, but with, deadly consequences.
Exactly, yeah.
So Forcelli gets to Phoenix. He's probably picturing something a little more low-key, maybe sipping some iced tea between, casual investigations.
I wish. Not quite.
Yeah.
More like stepping off the plane and straight into a mountain of cases.
Oh,
448 open investigations, and that was just for his group. Talk about a reality check. And you mentioned that culture shock earlier. Well, it hit him hard and fast, right there during a routine traffic stop.
This is the one he talks about in the book, right? Where they pull someone over and they're just rifles laying around?
Exactly. You're driving along, you pulled over, and what's just casually sitting there on the floor of the car, multiple rifles just out in the open. Forcelli, with his New York mindset, he's thinking, open and shut case, this is an easy arrest. But Phoenix, different story.
Yeah, I bet they probably gave the driver a pat on the back and said, you have a nice day, and sent them on their way.
You're not far off.
Ah.
Despite the blatant disregard for, any kind of gun safety, they let them go. And this wasn't like a one-time thing. Turns out the U.S. Attorney's Office in Arizona, the USAO, they had their own way of doing things.
Okay, gotta ask, what was their reasoning? I mean, a car full of rifles, that seems pretty cut and dry, right?
They were all about the bigger picture complex conspiracy cases. Those so-called low-level gun offenses.
Yeah.
Even with a car full of rifles staring them in the face, not really their priority. Didn't want to clog up the system with the smaller cases.
So already we're seeing this disconnect. ATF agents, boots on the ground, trying to stop these illegal guns, and then the prosecutors are basically like, we'll pass.
Exactly. And it's this seemingly small thing, this clash of priorities, that really sets the stage for even bigger frustrations and moral dilemmas. Like, remember CI 921, that informant?
Yeah.
His story, it throws his whole conflict into sharp relief.
Okay, CI 921, informant with a, should we say, unique fashion sense.
Yeah.
This is where it gets interesting.
Oh, this is where the real story starts.
Okay, CI 921, this informant, the one with the bold fashion choices, he was a treasure trove of information for the ATF, right?
Oh, yeah. See, to really get the good intel, you got to work with people who are in deep, the ones who might not be winning any best dressed awards.
Makes sense.
CI 921, he was plugged into that world, knew the players, the routes, everything about the gun trafficking game.
So the ATF hits the jackpot, but the prosecutors, they're not playing ball, all because of some flashy jewelry.
It was beyond frustrating. I mean, picture this. Forcelli and his team are bringing case after case, solid leads, hundreds of guns they could be taking off the streets.
Right.
And they keep hitting this wall with the USAO. They're pushing back, naturally, arguing that this guy's intel is gold.
And what was the official line? There had to be something more than just, we don't like his style.
Oh, there was always some procedural thing. Remember CI 921 was in witness protection? Well, apparently there was confusion about the rules for those kinds of witnesses. But between you and me, it's pretty obvious that CI 921's look, his whole background, wasn't sitting right with the people making the decisions.
So you've got bureaucratic nonsense on one hand, maybe a touch of bias on the other. It's mind-blowing that something as superficial as how someone dresses could actually get in the way of stopping gun trafficking.
And the worst part, Forcelli knew, like deep down, that this CI 921, His information was rock solid. They were
Yeah.
making arrests, seizing weapons, building strong cases,
Yeah.
and the USAO just kept dragging their feet.
I'd be pulling my hair out. Imagine pouring your heart into your work only to have it all held back by, what, too much bling? It's almost comical.
Tell me about it. Forcelli, though, he wasn't one to give up easily. Starts looking for other ways, right? Or starts working with county prosecutors, the ones who actually saw the value in these cases.
There you go, the guy's a go-getter.
Hmm.
But this really shows those cracks in the system, doesn't it? Agencies not talking to each other, personal feelings getting in the way of, real-world impact.
Exactly. And tragically, those cracks, they had victims. Forcelli talks about this one case, a young trafficker, Victor Varela, his gun, ended up killing a police commander in Mexico.
You're kidding. A police commander murdered with a gun the ATF could have gotten off the street, but because of red tape, because the system's messed up.
And get this, the USAO, they declined to prosecute Varela.
Oh, come on. How disheartening is that? It's like fighting a losing battle.
It's rough. And as if things couldn't get any worse, this is where Operation Fast and Furious rears its ugly head.
Right. From bad to worse.
This operation, it's a whole other mess. And it really drives home how those cracks we were talking about, they can turn into massive problems with devastating consequences.
Okay, before we get into that, for anyone who might not be totally up to speed, what exactly was Fast and Furious?
Basically, it was this super controversial thing the ATF did, where they intentionally let guns walk, meaning they let suspected straw buyers purchase firearms without stepping in.
Straw buyers, meaning someone buying a gun for someone else who couldn't legally get one.
Exactly. The ATF knew these were straw purchases, knew the guns were probably going to criminals, but they let it happen anyway. Their thought was they could track the guns, get the bigger fish, maybe even take down entire cartels.
High risk, high reward, but it sounds like it blew up in their faces.
Big time. They lost track of a ton of those guns, hundreds of them. And you know what? Those guns, the ones the ATF let walk right out the door, ended up being used in violent crimes on both sides of the border.
Okay, now I see why everyone was up in arms about this. But what was the final straw? What made it all come crashing down?
The death of a U.S. Border Patrol agent, Brian Terry. He was killed in 2010, shootout with suspected cartel members. And guess what was found at the scene?
Don't tell me. One of the guns from Fast and Furious.
You got it. The fallout was huge. Congressional hearings, investigations, the public was furious. It was bad for the ATF, for everyone involved.
And Forcelli, where was he during all of this? Did he know what was up with Fast and Furious?
He knew.
Yep.
Knew about the guns, knew about the risks, and he saw what happened because of it. And now he's got a choice to make. Stay quiet, toe the line, or speak up, knowing it could cost him everything.
And knowing Forcelli, something tells me he didn't stay quiet for long. But we'll get into that, the whole whistleblower thing and what it cost him, right after this.
So you've got Forcelli in a tough spot. He's seen firsthand how messed up things are, the gun trafficking, the ATF's own problems.
Right.
But he knows if he speaks out against the government, it could backfire big time.
And it wasn't just some abstract thing, right? This was about an agent getting killed directly because of this operation he knew was reckless.
Exactly. This wasn't just paperwork, People died because of choices made at the ATF, and he's convinced those choices were based on the wrong priorities.
That's a lot to carry around, knowing that and feeling like you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So what did he do? Try to go through the proper channels, or did he go straight to the outside?
He knew the only way to get the truth out was to blow the whistle. Reached out to Senator Chuck Grassley's office.
Grassley, he's the one who goes after the government, right?
That's the one. And let me tell you, that one phone call, it blew everything wide open.
I bet this wasn't some internal memo. This was about to be front page news. And Forcelli putting himself out there like that, that's a huge gamble.
Huge. Think about it. You're testifying before Congress. Everyone's watching your every move. You're basically challenging your own agency.
Yeah.
Not for the faint of heart.
What kind of pressure did he face during those hearings?
It was intense. I mean, the book really captures that. Pushback from his own bosses, people trying to make him look bad, and always that fear of what they might do to him.
Like what? Were there actual threats?
Not always outright threats, more like, that feeling of everyone icing you out. Or you always think maybe they'll try to dig up some dirt on you, use it against you.
Yeah.
Any little mistake you made, they could twist it around to make you look unreliable.
Classic tactic, right? Scare people into keeping quiet.
Exactly.
So he's going up against the whole system, risking his career, his freedom, just to tell the truth. That's serious guts.
And the amazing thing is, he didn't back down. Even when it would have been easier to just walk away. He knew that by talking, he might save lives.
Yeah.
couldn't let the sacrifices of guys like Agent Terry be for nothing.
It reminds you that sometimes doing what's right means going against the crowd, even when it's hard, even when you pay for it personally.
For sure. And while Forcelli's story, it's its own thing, it shows how tough it is to hold powerful people accountable. And to make sure that trying to get justice doesn't mean throwing out the rule book.
Makes you really think, doesn't it? About power, about who's keeping an eye on the people in charge, about those tough choices we all have to make.
Definitely. And we can't solve those in one go, but Forcelli's story, it makes you look at the systems we live in, the compromises people make, and how much courage it takes to stand up for what's right.
The Diddley Path. It's all about that courage. A real unvarnished look at the ATF and what it means to do the right thing even when it hurts. If you want a story that sticks with you, this is it.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see the whole gun trafficking world differently, the ATF, those guys who risked everything to expose the truth.
Absolutely.
And that's a deep dive I think we all needed.